Thanks for joining us on Digging for Value. I'm Allison Southwick here with Jim Mueller and Simon Erickson, analysts at the Motley Fool. So let's just get to the headlines today, shall we? Our top story, Bloomberg is reporting that Phase 2 of the BP oil litigation is starting on Monday. Phase 1 dealt with BP's negligence, and so far BP has paid out $26 billion in cleaning up with the mess in general. Now here comes more pain, right, Jim? What can you explain about what BP is facing here?
Yeah, ultimately they're going to be on the hook for quite a lot more, and what Phase 2 is going to do is determine exactly how much more. Phase 1 is determine how much negligence BP had in violating the Oil Pollution Act. And depending on the degree of negligence, whether it was gross negligence or just regular negligence, there's like a $3,000 difference between each barrel that they have to pay for. Phase 2 is going to be about how many barrels were actually spilled. BP is expected to argue that only about 3.25 million barrels came out in those 86 days in the summer of 2010, while the government is going to argue that much more, some 4.9 million barrels came out. And so the difference on, if they're found with being gross negligent on that, the difference in how much they would have to be liable for is the difference between 21 and $14 billion, or in other words, $7 billion. So this is going to be real big money for the company to pay out. And because it's such a huge amount, I'm sure it's going to be in the courts for a long time.
So then how worried should BP investors be here?
Not on the whole, I don't think. BP has already sold a bunch of assets to pay for what they've paid already and to set aside some more for this litigation. They don't actually have to set it aside until the likelihood that they're going to lose and the amount that they have to pay becomes known, and that could take several years. The Exxon Valdez spill, for instance, took 20 years in the courts, and that was less than a million barrels of oil spilled. And this is I'm sure this is going to be going on at least as long. But BP itself is a cash-generating machine. It sells gasoline to everybody on the road, just about. And in 2011, it had $7.8 billion in free cash flow. Last year, it had $7.3 billion. So it has plenty of money that it can set aside every year and spread out any total amount that it might owe over those many years. It pays a very healthy dividend today, around 5%, and as a shareholder, that makes me pretty happy, and I expect BP to keep on going where it's going.
So bottom line, they're facing some rough road ahead, but you still like them as a stock?
As a stock, yeah. As a company, maybe not. But as an investment, I think it's a fair investment, especially if you're after income.
All right. Well, our next story, over at the Wall Street Journal, they are reporting that the U.S. gas boom is helping to power seagoing vessels. Essentially, commercial marine operations are switching to natural gas over diesel because of some upcoming regulations over engine exhaust. So, Simon, who's going to benefit the most here from this?
Yeah, well, Allison, I think the first winners are the people that are designing the engines themselves. GE and Caterpillar are two names that come to mind that are already working on LNG-fueled engines for maritime operations. And we've seen this in other modes of transportation too. Westport Innovations has been a company that's been trying to do this for trucking in the United States. A little farther to the north, Canadian National Railway is also doing it for rail cars.
So, outside of the obvious winners here, as far as those involved with creating the engines, Jim, do you see any other winners?
Oh, sure. I mean, it could be the American consumer because the cost of shipping that stuff across the ocean is going to go down. LNG is cheaper than diesel. So not only does it help the environment, but it helps lower the costs. And so that's going to help either companies like C-SPAN, for instance, with those big container ships, or the companies that are renting from C-SPAN and sending the goods across. They might, that'll lower their costs, and they can hopefully pass those costs on to consumers.
Now, Simon, when you see news like this about maritime engines, are you thinking, oh, wow, this is an awesome new development? Or is it like, oh, this is another good news in the larger story of LNG and for companies like Westport? Like, where do you, how excited are you really to see this?
Allison, just to put things in perspective, the U.S. railroad industry last year consumed 3.1 billion gallons of fuel, mostly diesel fuel. Whereas there's almost 7 billion gallons of fuel used in maritime, in boats and tugboats and stuff like this. So I think it is opening a lot of doors for LNG as another mode of transportation.
All right, well, then let's get on to our next story. The Financial Times is reporting that the Chinese Sovereign Wealth Fund, essentially the Chinese government, is now the second largest shareholder in the world's largest potash producer. We're talking about the Uralkali, which I might be butchering the name. I've been trying to
Close
say
enough.
it correctly. Oh, okay, you'll get it right for me then. And as the Times points out, this paves the way for the largest shareholder, Suleiman Karimov, to leave the company. So kind of a dull headline here. CIC Chinese fund obtains 12% equity and stake in the Uralkali. But there's some serious drama going on here.
There is. So what's going on is last summer at the end of July, beginning of August, Uralkali announced that it was pulling out of one of the two cartels that sell 90% of the world's potash to all the farmers. Those cartels were BPC, Belarus Potash Corporation, and then Canpotex, which is the Canadian potash exporters, Potash Corp of Saskatchewan, Mosaic, and Agrium. And those 5 companies sold 90% of the world's potash to farmers as fertilizer, as potassium fertilizer. So when Uralkali said, "Oh, we don't want to play with you guys anymore," those potash producers saw big hits to their share price because the expectation was that the cost of potash per ton would drop from about $400 a metric ton down to $300 a metric ton, and that has big implications for the bottom line, and shareholders were understandably worried. Since then, the CEO of Uralkali was arrested when he went to Belarus to talk to the prime minister. He was actually in jail in Minsk for a month, and they just this morning released him to a house arrest. He's not allowed to leave the country yet, but it's probably better than sitting in jail all day. And as you said, the big investor,
Suleiman
Karimov has been said that he wants to get rid of his 22% stake in Uralkali. And that was seen as a good news for this whole drama and for all these other companies, in that he was seen as kind of the instigator of this move by Uralkali. And so if he's getting out, maybe things will go back to normal. But now the Chinese, the CIC, the Chinese Investment Corporation, has converted what was a bond stake. They just were receiving interest and payments from the company, has converted that to an equity stake, and that now then gives them a seat on the board and, as you said, the second biggest shareholder position.
So then what does this news mean for other potash producers? How excited are they about seeing this?
Well, there's still a lot of uncertainty because the story is certainly not over. Why is China now invested so heavily in a Russian company? Are they playing politics? How does that politically play between Russia and China? Is China trying to secure a source of potash for prices that it wants to pay? The seat on the board is certainly going to give them much more information on the production cost, and that's going to probably make them a tougher negotiator when they're buying potash in the future. However, you have to keep comments in mind that the CEO of Potash Corp said, Bill Doyle, and he said back when when the whole situation started, he said, "Potash is not like shoes. If you cut the price in half, farmers are not going to take twice as much." And so China is, yes, they probably want more potash because they have a huge population they have to feed, but they're probably not going to be able to absorb a large increase to their supply overnight. What investors in the various companies would hope for is just get this whole mess resolved. Whether the BPC is going to get resurrected or Uralkali is going to continue to go along, just get some settlement to the whole issue, and we'll be happy. We can figure out what to do then.
All right, so hold tight, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
And hopefully things will get better here. All right, our final headline is a press release that was put out by Solar City and Viridian Energy. They announced this week that they are teaming up to provide solar electricity to homeowners at a discount. Simon, what are the details of this announcement, and how big of a deal is this deal?
I do think this is a big deal, Allison. Bottom line, I think that Solar City has the potential to disrupt the traditional utility industry. It's not just about building the biggest power plant that you can and dumping all the electricity onto the grid anymore. Solar City's model is now you put all of these solar panels on residential homes and sell in smaller scale the electricity to the people that need that. The details of the release is obviously Viridian's opening up 230,000 of its customers to Solar City giving them the opportunity to deploy SolarCity's panels, and then Viridian would get a commission from SolarCity for setting up the customers. I think the play for Viridian here is to get a piece of this while they can. They see maybe this is a threat to the traditional model, and they'd rather have a small piece than no piece at all of it.
Right, so I remember when I was younger that you used to see solar panels on the roofs of houses all over the place. There was basically a boom in the 70s for solar panels. And now a lot of houses have these ugly solar panels on the roofs that don't work anymore. So what's different now about residential solar panels and what we're going to be seeing on people's roofs?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the adoption was really slow because residential homeowners didn't have the money up front to pay for the solar panels. The model with SolarCity, though, is SolarCity is footing the bill, if you will, to put these on people's housing. They're just selling the electricity to you at a lower rate than the utilities can really offer a lot of the times as well. So you don't have to foot the bill anymore to put the panels, the ugly panels on top of your house, as you said. Now it's just a utility play, if you will.
So then how important is this for SolarCity going forward as part of their bigger strategy?
I think that it is important. SolarCity, the name of the game for them is how many of these can they deploy. They're getting better every time they do this another time. And now you have 230,000 more customers that you can try this out on. Every time you put up a new panel, you get better at your bidding process, you get better at deploying it, and your costs will start coming down. So they'll be more profitable in the long run. I think that's really what they're trying to do out of this agreement right now.
All right, and how do you feel it's working out for them? Are you optimistic?
We'll see. We'll see how it plays. I am optimistic on the future of the company.
All right, well, that covers it for the headlines. Now I want to hear about one stock on your radar. Jim, you go first.
Well, I'm going to go back to this Potash story. I think
It's so interesting. I mean, why not?
Yeah, it's drama.
It's drama.
It's a soap opera.
It's a Russian drama.
There you go. I think investment. This big drop that many of the companies saw offers a good chance to get into it, many of them. But I'm going to go off the big company map and go over to a small producer of potash, SQM, which is an English chemical and mining company of Chile. They're a small producer of potash. They only provide about 3% of the world's potash, but they have a broad diversity of products that they sell. They're big on lithium. They're big on iodine, which shows up in more places than you might think, including LCD panels. And they also sell the specialty plant nutrition fertilizers, which takes potash as an input. And so the lower price for potash both hurts the company in selling a potash, but it helps the company in lowering its costs and helping margins in that segment, the SPN segment. So they dropped about 15-20% or so when this news broke. They've recovered about half of that, but the price is still about half of what it was a year ago. I think with a strong balance sheet and good cash flow generation, that's a pretty good opportunity to get in on this one.
All right, Simon, how about you? What stock's on your radar?
Allison, I like FMC Technologies, ticker FTI. They're a provider of subsea processing systems. So this is deep water developments, oil and gas. It's harder and harder to get, right? We don't have spindle tops anymore that are gushing oil out of the ground and making millionaires. It's getting harder.
Just into the Gulf of Mexico.
Right. Fair enough, Jim. It's getting harder and harder, and they're going to have to go deeper and deeper and deeper water to get oil. FMC just signed a deal with Shell to supply subsea systems for the Parque de Concas Phase 3 development off of the coast of Brazil. Another operator is looking to FMC Technologies, and this is in water depths of 5 to 6,500 feet. So it's harder to get. FMC is the market leader in this space. Interesting statistic from Wood Mackenzie that there's going to be a $114 billion global spend in deep water developments by 2022. We've got a market leader and a really good technology. I think that they're poised to outperform.
All right, well, thanks, guys. That covers it for today. If you're looking for more investing analysis on today's energy headlines, we've got you covered over at Fool.com, and you can also follow us at TMF Energy on Twitter. So for Simon and Jim, I'm Allison Southwick. Thanks for watching.